What's up YouTube? Capital G here. I know I said I was going to put up a video Monday. I apologize for being a couple days late, but let's get on to it. The new ban list will be out probably within 7 to 10 days, so I figured I'd go ahead and give my opinions and views on what I would do if I was making the ban list. This is not a prediction because you should have come to realize by now Konami is a very unpredictable company as far as the ban list goes. I mean, a lot of people think that Blacklisted Soldier is coming back. We all know how broken it is, especially with Honest being created. So, there's no telling what they're going to do. First card would be TG Hyper Librarian banned. It's pretty obvious. If they drop TG Librarian and you don't really immediately counter, you almost always lose if they can play out their turn. They'll either draw too many cards where they can comfortably win, or they'll basically just be able to build up an entire field of synchros, drawing, never really losing advantage, so that they can keep that locomotion going, and you'll just get OTK'd. So that's got to go. Second card, Sangan. Way too abusable with Tour Guide. It lets you, instantly XYZ. You can detach him, potentially get like 2,500 beaters with Leviel Dragon, and then end up getting a search for just one Tour Guide. Even without Tour Guide, this card has just become way too ridiculous. Why do we need a generic floater that tutors basically about 60% of the monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh? I don't really get it. I mean, your time has come in passing, and I just really don't think that this card is necessary anymore. If you want to search those cards, just run other stuff like, generic search cards like Rhoda or Proving Ground or stuff like that, or Mystic Tomato if you want to get to your cards faster. We don't really need Sangan in the game, in my opinion. Next card, Dandelion. It creates way too much free advantage when you look at it from like a milling standpoint. Cards like Trooper or Raikou, Glow Up Bulb. Like, you hit this card and a lot of times you'll win or be in a huge, it'll give you a huge advantage, which really shouldn't happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! The fact that if you dump it from your deck, with like Foolish Burial or something, you're at a huge advantage. In addition, it creates tokens which are way too easily abusable with cards like Formula Synchron and Enemy Controller and Tributing for Monarchs, and it opens up way too many possibilities. I think Dandelion has to go in the Plant Engine. The Plant Engine is one of the two biggest problems with the game right now. Just being able to splash 5 monsters in a deck and make it instantly competitive, whether it's Karakuri or Fabled or Tengu. This card is, in my opinion, like the heart of the problem. Way too many plays, just having it in your deck leads to massive synchro spam, and I think it just has to go. My limited cards. Heavy Storm, problem number 2 with the format, back row spam, which is actually more annoying than synchro spam. I'm not going to lie, when I look back at my Gladiator Beast deck, all I did was back row spam, which is what most of the people do. It's how Homeboy won with TG at the Nationals in North America. Basically, you set 5, set 4, summon a monster. If it's a good anti-meta monster, you're basically going to win. You start with something like Trap Dust Shoot, your opponent's psyche is completely broken. And in the format currently, there's absolutely no way to punish your opponent. Whether your face down is Pot of Duality or Smashing Ground or Rhoda, your opponent really doesn't know the difference. So chances are they're immediately on the defensive. You have full complete advantage. If your cards are good, that's even better, because now you've gone from probably going to win to almost certainly going to win. Heavy Storm is the great equalizer. I used to hate this card during Teledad format. I now understand that it is a necessity. This card is Trishula. Mine's coming in the mail, but we should match up with the OCG as far as this goes. There's no reason why we really need 3 Trishulas. If you can't win with one, then you're obviously doing this shit wrong. Lone Fire Blossom. I knew this card was going to be a problem when I first looked at it. The fact that it was a monster that could search any card of an entire archetype from the deck, or an entire type. I mean, could you imagine if Dragons had something like this, where you could just pull Red Eyes Metal Darkness from your deck or something like that? Not as bad as Rescue Cat, but I mean, even with Dandelion gone and this the one, the plant engine would still live. You just have to do stuff like Titanial, and you'd see this not being splashed in, just random decks that it has no business in. And that's what Konami really should be aiming at. They shouldn't have the plant engine literally being thrown into everything, being thrown into hero decks, for God's sakes. My next card, Card Trooper. I never liked the idea of this card going to from 2 to 1. I mean, from 1 to 2. It's a floater. It mills cards. It speeds up engines like Chaos and Pot of Avarice and stuff like that, hitting Dandelions. Even when you get it back from stuff like the Breed Dragon, you can still activate the cost. It becomes 1900, which is pretty much either big enough to clash or run over anything that's not a tribute or a synchro. So you usually can make advantage off of that. And then anytime it dies, you draw, much like Sangan becomes a floater. I just think it's too good to be at 2 copies, to be honest. Pot of Avarice. Avarice was a card that originally was balanced, but the speed of the game has become far too great. If you're not basically, pulling lone fires out of your deck and doing all of that to thin your deck out or milling, then you can easily just synchro up. What I mean by synchro up, I mean starting with something like Formula, tuning 2 cards together to make Formula, then summoning a monster, tuning together that with Formula, and it's like, bam, oh, I got 5 cards right there. The speed of the game has basically just made the cost of this card a complete joke. So for it to be a +1 and let you draw 2 and then get your resources right back, I think it just has to go to 1. And then Speak of the Devil, Formula Synchron. With Dandelion limited, I guess you could make an argument that this doesn't have to be limited, but my biggest beef with this card is actually in Water and Frog decks. The fact that they basically just hide behind it every single turn with their Treeborn in the graveyard, usually Fishboard 2, and every single turn they can make a Formula Synchron. Essentially what they're doing is they're getting an extra draw phase. They're basically taking the worst card in their hand, the card that they don't want, and they're trading it for Formula Synchron and then another draw. And I don't think that you should be able to hide behind that every single turn. Fish decks have been doing this. Monarch decks have been doing this forever. And it's just kind of unfair because only a few decks can make Formula Synchron. And even plants can't essentially make Formula Synchron turn after turn after turn after turn. And again, it's like getting an extra draw phase every single turn so that you can dig a little deeper. Oh, I drew my Reborn. I drew my Dark Hole. I drew that one card that I needed to whoop your ass. My semi-limits. The first up, obviously, Reborn Tengu. This is probably the biggest problem card going right now because it's used in meta decks and anti-meta decks. The fact that once you summon it, if your opponent really doesn't immediately answer, it just creates so much field presence, so much board presence. Your opponent has to waste massive resources. And then since it's mandatory when it activates, the fact that if it activates in a chain, you can't use stuff like Royal Oppression to negate it. It will come out no matter what. It doesn't have to be sent to the graveyard, just removed anyway. That could have hurt its playability, and they probably should have put that it has to be sent to the graveyard. But I don't know. They just made Tengu too strong of a card. All the synchro and tributing options that it opens up are just like, it's just icing on the cake. And then Burial from a Different Dimension. I don't even understand why this card ever was limited. I think it was just a gut reaction to like trying to kill off zombies in Japan. Necro Gardener is at 1. It has been for a while. Mizuki was at 1, and it has been for a while. There aren't any other really problematic cards. I said this like a year and a half ago, I think. Like, there was no reason for Burial to ever be limited. I mean, those cards aren't even a problem in our format, but unless you put Mizuki at 2, zombies never really become a problem. Necro Gardener sees no play at all, so this card can go to 2. And then for my unlimits, Mystical Space Typhoon. It's a 1-for-1. It's not overpowered. I can't think of a deck that would play 3. I remember when Mystical Space Typhoon, when I was playing back in Magic Ruler, and I was playing 3, and people were like, you're playing 3 MSTs? Why would you ever need that much back row destruction? And I was like, I don't know. It looks nice, and it's shiny, and it's my favorite card. Yeah, I can't think of a deck that would ever play 3 of this, so I don't really understand why it's semi-limited. It seems so random. Like, either put this shit at 1 or put it at 3. It doesn't make sense for it to be at 1. I mean, and people say, oh, well, it's chainable. Yeah, it's chainable if you MST by MST. Like, do you even understand the irony in that? And then Kalut. People have called me mad. I've suggested either Kalut go to 3 or Whirlwind to 2. I think it makes more sense. Like, this card only got limited because Japan was so hard on Blackwing, and they have been forever because they don't have any of our good, TG exclusive cards, like Tour Guide and Gravekeeper's Recruiter, and they didn't have Dark Soul and shit like that. I mean, and the biggest reason was because Blackwings basically used to beat Samurai, because when they got Sheen out, motherfuckers attack Kalut, you mad, your Sheen's dead, I win. You know, Kalut has no business being restricted. It's not honest. It's nowhere near as good as honest. Yes, you can drop it when you direct attack. Doesn't really matter. This card should be at 3. So that's basically my view on the ban list. I want you guys to tell me what you think, what you think Konami will do, what you think needs to happen. If you think some of my bans were a little out there or you didn't like them, you know, I always try and bring back some cards. I also think maybe Reborn could be banned and D-Mock could come back. Man, I want D-Mock to come back. Like, D-Mock for president. I don't know. Thanks, guys. Thank you for watching.